Okay, now we're standing at Hamburg University in the Audi Max, and I have a special guest with me today. It's Anna. Hi.
Hi, Mirjam.
You've been in Syria in 2011 from February till May, right? And what have you been doing there?
Well, I was working there as an intern at the Austrian embassy. I'm from Austria originally. And yeah, I was working there as an intern for 3 months then. And I had a broad field of what I was doing. I was doing translation, since I studied translation in Austria for Arabic and French, political research, so many fields I was introduced to during this internship.
It's a broad field, actually, right? And do you work with other students as well, or were you the only intern at that time?
I was the only intern. I don't know about other embassies. I think bigger embassies of bigger countries take more interns, but Austrian embassies generally take one intern at a time, since it's not paid either. To be able to have this broad field for one intern, yes.
I can imagine that a lot of people at home, students at home, think, oh, that's amazing, what kind of job, how do I get this job?
Well, you just apply for it. Basically, it was my initiative, so there was no word they said we need an intern, but I just wrote a letter, I would like to work for you, can I do this, and if yes, what shall I send to you? And then I just made an application and it worked.
Sounds great. And during that time you've been there from February till May, it was a very difficult time in Syria. In March it all started when children in Daraa started painting slogans on the walls, which were already used in Egypt. And how did you hear from it for the first time?
Well, when I got there, that was about 2 or 3 weeks before what you were talking about started, before these kids started writing those slogans on the walls. And if I hadn't had friends from this area, the girl I was living with, she was Syrian, she came from this area actually, and so she told me about what was going on, and I heard about it from other students who have friends in this area who were working there and so on. But in the media, really in the beginning, you couldn't hear, well, in the state media, you couldn't hear anything about it. So it was either from people you could hear about it or from foreign media. Yeah.
So you've been in Damascus at this time and were working in the embassy. But how did the people in your embassy react?
Well, that's a tough question, because nobody really could tell what was going to happen. Because when I got there, nobody, neither my friends nor any people I was talking to, they actually believed that something like had happened in Egypt or in Tunisia was really possible in Egypt, because it's a really oppressive system. People thought that that was never going to happen because it's just too much oppression reigning in this country. So that was not foreseeable, really. So nobody thought it would go that far.
Okay, but did. And but further on, you have been there for three months after this, after it started. How did it continue? How did it come to Damascus?
Well, it actually went on in a circle. We had these kids that were arrested in Daraa because of what they did. Those kids, of course, they have parents. Those parents wanted to know what happened with their kids, so they went to the court. They wanted to know, to the police, to the court, to the security, where are our kids? And they started demonstrating for the release of their kids. And when there was no reaction from the police, from the courts, those families, they have friends, they have a community around them, so they started demonstrating. And when those kids were released, they saw the signs of torture they had. And for example, their fingernails were pulled out, and so they saw which terrible things happened to their kids while they were in prison. Kids, you have to imagine, not even adults. So that's how it started, and these communities that were involved, their families, the whole city, they started demonstrating against the security forces, against what they did to their kids. And so while they were demonstrating, people got killed, people got shot at the demonstrations. And then people in other cities started demonstrating out of solidarity with those people. So that's how it actually went out from Dara, from this region in the south, from the Hauran region, out to other regions because of out of solidarity. And so you had this circle, and you had demonstrations there, shootings there, and so it spread all over the country.
So it's like little waves getting to more people, to more people, to more people, and in the end everybody is informed and aroused and nervous. Were you afraid during that time?
Well, I have to say, in Damascus, in the capital, if you didn't talk to people, if you didn't want to know what was going on around in other areas, in other cities, you wouldn't really have thought that this was actually happening. Because in Damascus it was really calm. Everything you could see with the time, about 2 or 3 weeks after those things were happening in Dara, were demonstrations or marches with the government, for the president. People were wearing flags, they were singing slogans for the government, in support of the government, in support of Bashar al-Assad. So
why?
Well, many people, of course, they wanted to, but there was also a big part of them, I was told, where in state firms they told the people who were working there, you go and demonstrate tomorrow, you go and march tomorrow for the government, or you don't have a job the day after. So there was a lot of pressure behind that as well.
So it's on the one hand there are people who actually liked Assad and wanted to support him, and on the other side there are people who are forced to support him. And then there are a few opponents who are brave enough to stand up.
Well, there were few in the beginning. Well, probably have to say why it didn't appear that much in Damascus at first was because the security forces are really, really present there. It's the government seat. You have the center of the police is in Damascus, so you have a very large presence of this security system. People are definitely more afraid of whoever could listen to them, whoever could arrest them arbitrarily. And so, yeah, that's the reason why probably it came to Damascus later. But there were people who were demonstrating against it, but those were very few. I saw that once when I followed one of those marches where people were singing for the president, for the government. And there actually happened clashes between those thousands of people. I really have to say there were thousands. The streets were full of them. You can't imagine. It was really full of people marching for it. And then there were few, about 50, I don't know, people who were demonstrating for those people in Homs, in Dara, that were hurt, that were killed, that were arrested. And then there were clashes of those two groups, and apparently because there was so many more who were marching for the government, they disappeared really fast, those people who were against it.
Sounds dangerous, I think. And we have something in Germany. It's also dangerous, but has nothing to do with Syria. So we move to another topic, and now you see our next interesting topic, which is ice skating. It's dangerous as well, but not as dangerous as your situation, I guess. So let's see.
Man muss es ja nicht immer den Amerikanern überlassen, neue bescheuerte Sportarten zu erfinden. Wir können das auch. So, heute Eis skaten. Also hier Wald, Schuhe, Waldweg und los. Die Wege sind völlig vereist. Dadurch, dass sich Tauwetter und dass sich Frost und Tauperioden ständig wieder selber abwechseln und dass gerade auf den hier Wegen im Wald ständig der Schnee festgetreten wird, bleibt es dadurch, auf den Wegen bleibt eine Eisschicht von ca. 5 cm Stärke zurück und das eignet sich hervorragend zum Skaten. Also ich hätte das selber nicht für möglich gehalten, dass die Wege derartig gut zu befahren sind. Also man hat hier natürlich keine spiegelglatte Oberfläche vorliegen, aber man kann auf jeden Fall drauf fahren. Und es kommt sogar hinzu, dass das eine besondere Herausforderung darstellt, auf diesem unebenen Untergrund zu fahren. Und der Untergrund, muss man sagen, ist nicht wirklich uneben, sondern gleichmäßig uneben. Man kann darauf relativ regelmäßig fahren, hätte ich selber nicht gedacht. Völlig vereist. Und dadurch, dass ständig Steine mit eingefroren sind, ja, wie soll ich sagen, dadurch erhöht sich noch der Grad an Herausforderung, dadurch, dass man die in seinen Bewegungsfluss selber mit einbauen muss. Man darf sich getrost mal die Frage stellen, warum immer alle neuen bescheuerten Extremsportarten immer aus den Vereinigten Staaten kommen müssen. Also wir erfinden hier auch mal in Europa coole Sportarten. Heute Eisskaten, Eisforest-Skaten. Ein weiterer positiver Nebeneffekt bei der Angelegenheit ist, dass heute aufgrund der Tatsache, dass es wirklich spiegelglatt ist, die ganzen nervigen Leute mit ihren Hunden heute einfach im Wald nicht auftauchen. Also es ist echt klasse. Also super neue Sportart. Tauwetter zu skaten. Also normalerweise braucht man ja, wenn man in Hamburg Inline skaten, normalerweise braucht man, wenn man in Hamburg Eislaufen will, was weiß ich, 10 Tage Dauerfrost, bis die Seen eine tragfähige Eisschicht ausgebildet haben. Und das hier, also keine Ahnung, es ist 5 Grad warm oder vielleicht sogar noch ein bisschen wärmer. Es ist trotzdem vereist und es funktioniert.
We're just talking about how dangerous it was and how the security system worked, but I'm still not sure how you felt. Did you see the security system, or can we imagine something like our East Germany time?
Well, probably you could compare it to the Stasi system that was in East Germany times, because you have to imagine the security system is called mukhabarat in Arabic, and they're basically kind of everywhere. They don't wear a uniform or anything, but there's civilians, or you think they're civilians, but they sit in coffee shops, they sell cigarettes on the street, so they're kind of everywhere in the society. And sometimes you can tell whether somebody is there because people say, you know, they're strong men, often wearing leather jackets, for example, so you could tell these people sitting over there, they're probably from the security forces. But more importantly, maybe, is the constant control over the internet, over the phone. So I was told, and I was sure about that you couldn't really talk on the phone with your family, with other people, even text messages. And the more the problems got worse, the more there was control, of course, because government wants to know, or security forces want to know what is going on. If there's any demonstration happening, they want to know who is organizing them and who is responsible for them. So they control phones, they control text messages and everything. So I wasn't able to really talk to my family at home about what is going on, because I knew there could probably somebody be listening. And if you are talking about anything, or talking about people you know who are involved in anything, then they're going to know them, and then they're going to appear in front of their door, knock at their door and say, hey, come with us, we have to talk to you. So you're also responsible with what you do for other people, because maybe they won't show up at your door, but at other people's doors. So I had to really talk to my family. I was talking over the embassy phone, which has a secure line, so they couldn't listen.
Then you have been one of the lucky ones, I guess, to be able to talk about on the embassy phone. But what about your roommates, for example?
Well, yeah, they couldn't. I mean, some who were technically a bit more advanced, they could install some systems on their phones where they could be sure, or more or less sure, nobody could listen. So there were ways, you know, people always find their ways in these situations. But in general, of course, you had to be careful with everything you were doing, with everything you were saying, because you never knew who was going to listen. And the worst thing probably was this development that you couldn't even be sure who to talk to. Because if I talk to you now, how can I be sure you are not going to tell security forces, for example? So this mistrust that developed among people was probably the worst thing that came out of this whole situation, because you were never sure who you were really able to talk to. Only trust your friends, and who are your friends? So this feeling of mistrust was becoming more and more,
obvious. Yeah. And have you had any negative experience with the security system, like around your friends or your co-workers?
Yes, there were a few situations which actually then led to my, exit, to me leaving the country. Because in Damascus, as I said, you couldn't really experience any, or as a foreigner in my situations, experience any dangerous situation, except if you were joining demonstrations and probably taking pictures of police cars or anything. I had, for example, a friend who took a picture of vans where people were arrested. And then he got arrested. He was, he was a European, and he got arrested for a few hours, but then was released pretty fast. But probably because he was a European. But if he had been Syrian, which happened to many Syrians, you could be in prison for days, months, even years. So,
did he tell you what happened?
Well, they just asked him many questions. Why he was in Syria, what he was doing there, why he was taking pictures of those police vans, and so they were asking questions over and over again. He didn't have any violent experience at that point, but still it was a sign. Okay, they arrest you just for taking pictures.
You said at that point. Is there another experience?
Yeah, well, we used to do excursions or going for trips over the weekend, because I was working during the week, so then I wanted to see something of the country on weekends. So this one time, a friend of ours, he was Syrian, he came from the coastal region of Tartus. He invited me and a couple of friends to spend a weekend at their cottage, walk around the countryside, have a nice weekend among friends, basically. And so we were walking there by foot. We had our tents with us, some had bikes, so we were just a group of friends who wanted to do a trip on the countryside, basically. And so when we were entering this one village, suddenly there were people with arms standing there telling us they have to what are we doing there? They wanted to know, why are we there? Who are we? And we said, we're just a couple of friends. I mean, we were an international group. We were a couple of Arabs, a couple of Europeans, so just a mixed group, one Iraqi. And so we got into deep problems because those were people from the village. They weren't even policemen or anything. They were just people from the village who were suspicious of who we were. Because, you know, the theory at the time from the government was everything that is trouble now comes from outside, comes either from the West or is influenced from outside, basically. It doesn't come out of the Syrian people, but comes from outside. And we were from outside. We were an international group, so we were suspicious. And so they controlled us. We were kept there for hours. Then the police came and they got in trouble with those people because they said, you know, you can't control because you're not police. Then the military came, then the security forces, and suddenly there were 50 people, all armed, one with their private arms, one with police arms, and they weren't able to figure out who is actually responsible here. And that was not a good sign, because if you don't know who is actually responsible, and if there's fighting among them, then you know there's something going deeply, deeply wrong.
Yes, it's like a rank of power, right? Nobody knows who has the highest, maybe. One thing I picked up is are the weapons. Where do they come from? If already the village people have weapons during that time.
I mean, during that time it was mostly hunting weapons they used. So they had their hunting weapons that they used for hunting, but of course you can use it for other purposes as well. So at that time I'd say people weren't really getting arms from anywhere else, well, in my opinion, because I saw those arms, they were hunting arms. But of course this changed. People started organizing arms from other regions, from wherever. But at that point, yeah, they just had their hunting arms.
Now we know that nowadays people are moving. They're not particularly interested in arming up. They rather go to Turkey, for example, and the surrounding countries of Syria to be safe. And that's something the UNICEF people at Hamburg University thought about a lot, and therefore they did something which you will see in the next film.
Und wir sind heute hier an der Uni und haben ganz, ganz viele wichtige Geschenke dabei, die man bei uns gegen eine Spende bekommen kann. Wir sammeln gerade für Syrien, weil uns das besonders am Herzen liegt dieses Jahr, weil dort ganz, ganz viel benötigt wird. Also zum Beispiel Decken und auch für die Familien der Schutz, dass man einfach warm ist und Essen hat, und genau dafür sammeln wir heute. Also wir sind heute hier, weil wir für Syrien sammeln, weil dort eben ganz viele Flüchtlinge unterwegs sind durch die Unruhen, die es dort gerade gibt. Und dadurch kann UNICEF dann direkte Nothilfe leisten und Decken und Schutz bieten. Und das ist besonders wichtig. Deswegen sind wir heute hier und wollen so viele Spendengelder wie möglich sammeln. Die Aktion läuft super. Also wir haben schon eine ganze Spendendose voll und jetzt stellen wir die nächste hin und es geht weiter. Alle gesammelt bei uns zu Hause. Also eigentlich Dinge, die wir jetzt irgendwie nicht mehr gebrauchen konnten. Ein Buch, was wir schon gelesen haben, eine CD, die wir schon gehört haben, und genau, und haben die eingepackt. Geschenke wissen wir auch gar nicht, was drin ist. Also ich gerade meinte zum Beispiel eine CD, die man gehört hat, und eine DVD, wo man den Film geschaut hat, und genau, die werden dann einfach eingepackt.
Ja, der war geil, super.
Hier ist ein sehr schöner Stand mit ganz vielen süßen Geschenken. Zum guten Zweck für UNICEF, und da sollte man doch mitmachen, oder? Wenn man dafür noch ein Geschenk abräumen kann. Ja, schon ganz cool.
UNICEF hilft Syrien und mir.
Ich darf sogar fühlen. Ja. Ich mache das ja nicht nur, weil ich ein Geschenk haben will, ne? Weil wegen dem guten Zweck hier. Also ich bin die Bibi und ich habe gerade hier ein Geschenk gekauft für einen guten Zweck und das ist es und ich freue mich. Das ist mein Geschenk für mich, was ich mir gerade selber gekauft habe. Das nehme ich jetzt mit und packe das dann gleich mit meinen Freunden zu Hause aus und ich bin gespannt, was drin ist. Ich freue mich.
We see a lot of things have been done, but it was already discussed whether to send NATO troops as well in the global community. What do you think? China and Russia were against it, so it didn't happen. Would it be a good idea? Would it have been necessary to do that?
Well, this is a very tough question because NATO intervention is always a very, very big step. In the situation as it is now, it is really hard to tell whether this is a good idea or not, because for a very, very long time, the international community has just been watching what is happening and has been waiting for a very long time. And for about a year, there wasn't really talk about the actual possibility of an intervention. But I don't feel like being in the position of whether to say if it's good or not, because now I'm talking about my experience about 2 years ago now. Many things have been happening. Society, I'd say, really changed in Syria. The positions have changed since that. So people who were probably pro-regime before what happened are now against, but people's position also switch because there is the large factor of insecurity, of instability, because probably people think, yeah, the regime should change, Bashar al-Assad should go, but there's also a fear of what comes next, what will be after the area, because there's no real united opposition until now. So this is a very, very tough question. But what we should focus on, what I am sure should be focused on, are those thousands and hundreds of thousands of refugees that you were talking about now. So this should be a huge focus to help those people who had to flee, who had to leave their homes and their countries, and trying to help those people. Everything else is a really, really tough question that I'm not sure I can answer.
Yeah, I feel the same. I always feel totally lost if I read something and I don't know who are the opponents here, what's actually going on. It's so confusing. But what do you think? Like 2 years have been passed now. What's your point of view, or how did it change from the time you've been there and worked there and now?
Well, what I hear from friends right now, I mean, I still have many friends who are there. A big part also left. But what has been changed, life completely changed for people there. At the time when I was there, it was still, oh, this will pass, you know, reforms are going to be made. This won't last very long. But now 2 years passed and nothing has changed, and everything has changed for the worse. So if we have now a bomb attack, nobody knows who is really responsible. So you cannot tell who should you believe. And I think often people in Syria are not in a very different position from us, watching, because where should you know from whose bomb that was falling? Of course there are people who know, but it is just a very, very gray area and people don't know who to trust. And so I don't think that a lot has changed so far.
Yeah, we have civil war and everybody is lost. Yeah. What are your wishes for Syria right now?
Well, what are my wishes? I think they're the same as everybody else who is seeing people suffering, is just peace, and is what, when I talk to my Syrian friends, is they just want one Syria for all. They want to go back to their homes. They want to continue their lives. I mean, so many young people that I got to know, they were just about to start their lives, and it's just not possible to continue living them, because this is a country where you can't live without the fear of dying when you go out on the streets, because there's civil war going on there. So it's just peace and one Syria for all.
What's your advice for us or for the viewers at home who think, oh, I can't believe this, I want to do something? What should we do?
Well, what can you do in our position? I mean, I believe that it is already important, for example, what you're doing, right? You see, we have refugees here. This is an actual problem. This is something you see. Those people are suffering. They left their country. So this is where we can actually do something. If you can influence the political decisions that are going on in Syria, I do not think so. But keep yourself informed. Read different sources. Don't just read one, I don't know, don't just read the state media or don't just read one paper. Try to get yourself a perspective that considers more points of views than one. This is very important because you will not have one source that will tell you the complete truth. In a situation like this, that is just not possible. But try to keep yourself informed and don't forget. Because what I see now is every time you have a war started or a situation like it is in Syria now and you have the media, they talk about it, they bring articles about it. And the more time passes, the more it disappears. To the back page and to the news features. But just don't forget, it is still going on and is getting worse. And keep yourself informed. And try to help there where you can actually help.
Can you name some sources like Al Jazeera, or what kind of newspapers do you read?
Well, what I do is I read blogs as well as newspaper articles, as subjective as they might be, but via Twitter you can inform yourself from journalists that are actually inside Syria, or if you just Google them, or just try to read, should I say, different sources. Read Arabic newspapers. There's BBC Arabic, for example. There is Al Jazeera in English. Yeah, just different sources. I would never tell, just read one, because no one will be able to tell you the truth. So just try to look around.
To get closer into the truth, yeah. Okay, thank you so much, and we will see each other next month. I'm gladly to see you again.